One of them that doesn't take a special place to do it, something that I can do on my phone, is learn about history, and I spend a lot of time doing that. Why doesn't the United States Navy have a submarine division, or even DARPA? Why don't they? I mean, they do have project ideas in the works, but they're not really in the works. I mean, truly, those places only make those things because it's what they're asked to do. The United States, we've been making midget submarines for over 100 years now. But unlike imperial powers, it was not built by the military. It was built by private contractors, by private companies, not companies that were set up by the monarchy, because we don't have one. We just got a bunch of people who think they're princesses. Your daddy telling you you're a princess don't make it true. And the first time you catch Santa Claus putting presents under the tree, you're going to be surprised at who Santa Claus is. Why do we put so much importance on fake things? On telling lies and selling lies to our children? In World War II, alone among all of the great powers, the United States military did not make or produce any midget submarines. Not even one. They didn't produce any of them. It was all contracted out to things that already existed. See, here's something that DARPA, as far as submarines go, will mention to you. Well, if they were allowed to. None of their submarines are going to be able to do any of the great and wonderful things that private contractors have done because technology goes too fast. They just can't keep up. They come up with a concept and they work on it, but by the time they're able to figure out how to work it out, civilian markets out here with all these people with their great ideas and all these poor people getting their ideas basically ganked by rich people because it takes a lot of money to get a patent. If you don't have a patent, they can steal from you and do whatever they want. And then, of course, you don't have the money for the patent. Obviously, you're not going to have the money for a friggin' lawyer to go to court. Basically, all you do is spend your entire life wasting your entire life on a great idea and then wasting the rest of your efforts for the rest of your life trying to get the proceeds of your great and wonderful idea, and you're on your own. It takes money, and you're one of the people with money, and you don't know people with millions of dollars, and if you do, you understand there's a reason they have millions of dollars. Looks like someone typed something down here. Calls himself 7 Black Swans. Typed, I didn't know you were a Navy man. Thank you, sir, for your service to America. I'm not a Navy man. I tried to get into the Navy. I was in the delayed entry program, and I was denied entry into the military because I had applied for disability. Imagine that. So no, I was never in the Navy. One of the places in the United States I always wanted to go was Norfolk. I'd been to Bremerton Naval Shipyard, not much to see there. What I got to see was the deck of the USS Missouri, BB-63, which has been relocated again. The end of World War II was assigned aboard the USS Missouri. The day before the anniversary, the 50th anniversary of the signing of the end of World War II. I was on that ship, say through the home, but I can't be sure about that. But I did get to go step on board the ship and got to meet some of the people who served aboard it, because they were giving tours. Like I said, it was the day before the 50th. It really is. I just didn't get to go do any of the things that I had originally planned on doing when I realized I was going to have more time on my hands when I went to Virginia. There were a couple of people that I was going to rescue other than Natalie, and both of those people, one of them I was able to get her issue squashed and taken care of within a day of being in Virginia. The other one, also easy peasy. Just like with Natalie, complaining that it was taking me too long to get there and she needed me to be there. Well, Mahalia, in the amount of time that it took me to finally get something done, she had found somebody else to help her, thank goodness. Who actually helped her. It wasn't like I went, oh, well, she says that her dad's going to send her a bus ticket, so we'll just call that good. Well, there's a chance her dad might not send her a bus ticket. There is always the chance that that won't actually pan out. Sometimes people, like your parents, are going to have expectations of you that they don't have of themselves. But it did come through. Now, if I'd decided that, well, she didn't need my help anymore because her dad told her that he was going to get her a ticket. Now, if he hadn't gotten her a ticket and she still needed my help, imagine if I ignored her for 6 months. And then after 6 months, you say, well, I thought if I said, I thought your dad was going to take care of it after 6 months of ignoring her. Imagine all the things that can happen screwed up in 6 months of ignoring someone. When it comes to history, I love history because those who don't know their history are doomed to repeat it. There's a lot of submarines. Some of them are actually reasonably close by that I'd like to see. We've got a surviving Type 9 submarine here in the United States over on the East Coast. We've got multiple Gato and Baleo class submarines from World War II. Some of them are not in the best of shape. Some of them have been vandalized. Some of them have been submerged with the hatch open. Some of them are falling apart after spending years as a museum. They're falling apart. I thought about, how great it would be. There's one of them that's in a river, and the river is way too low for that submarine to make it out or float it out. I got a way to float it out to sea. I'm pretty intelligent. And also the idea that I had has been used before. You can thank Hannibal Barca. And where did Hannibal Barca get the idea? Probably from the Romans. He was pretty smart like that. You see something that works, use it. Now, one of the things that works really well, midget submarines. We Americans in World War II didn't want to give anybody credit for their midget submarines, especially after the dastardly attack on December 7th. That was a... the Kaiten, the Kairyu, and I'm probably horribly butchering those names, by the way. I had to read them. America had frogmen. Everybody else's people were using these frogmen that were using these submersibles. We had the V. Fast. Real fast. Also, it ran on a stabilized hydrogen. We still talk about how there's no safe way to store hydrogen. Well, you can stabilize it. You can stabilize hydrogen peroxide. Then you get both hydrogen and oxygen out of that. And it's immense quantities of pressure. It's also combustible because you've separated that hydrogen from the oxygen. Now that part right there, when they start making these torpedoes and stuff that run on that, they only make one or the other. Now, we've got a type of that creates a gas bubble around itself because it's going so fast and because it has a specific shape to it. Now, as far as the control surfaces go, they can't touch the water. If they do, it'll hit those control surfaces hard enough to shear them off. It'd be like trying to go Mach speeds in an airplane and then making a hard left. You're going to lose your wings, you're going to lose the nose, you're going to lose the tail, you're going to lose your life, and it'll happen quick. Just that fast. Probably faster. Now, we look at a lot of the stuff that was commissioned by the military, that the military wanted something, but what we made was better. Because what the military wanted was something that was big, ginormous, and complicated, and not user-friendly. Our shipbuilders made stuff that was easy to make. Idiots could build it. Idiots could take it apart. Idiots could reassemble it. Idiots could repair it. So you didn't need to have people that took 2 years of A school before they could go in and do what their job is. Now, the midget submarines that the frogmen use, and we used them in Vietnam, we also used them in World War II. We used captured midget submarines all the time. When we took over Italy, we took and captured a lot of midget submarines that the Italians had used to great effect. And we knew they were used to great effect because we captured Italian records and we cross-referenced them with, well, for example, Liberty ships that just fell in half and sank in a matter of 3 to 5 seconds. Like, those things are heavy, they're loaded down. When they break literally in half. No, it was the LSTs, that's what it was. Landing ship tank. When they got hit by a torpedo on the side, yeah, they had some flex to them. But it was one giant wide open berth in the middle. It's like a giant, huge, massive air pocket. And as soon as you blow the seal on that, all that seawater goes in just a moment's notice. Not even that. Plus all of the weight of the cargo that's inside of it. I mean, it drops like a friggin' ton of bricks. It's made out of metal. But here in the United States, we get to see how we've got private submarines that you can buy for cheaper than the military would be able to set up and produce them for the runs that they would make. For our civilian market, it's easier for them, if there's a need, to just purchase it. One thing most people don't know about the PT boats and don't know about the PBRs, things of that nature. They were actually civilian designs before the war. They were just, all right, we'll put some extra stuff on and here you go. We'll make one a little bit longer, here you go. But the civilian technology was always moving faster than generals who were fighting the last war. They look at the problems of the last war and they go, all right, how can we look at what we did effectively and do it better? And how can we exploit what they screwed up next time to even greater effect? But your opponent's doing the same thing. Now, when you've got military super technologies and you're not putting them together because you've got a bunch of crazy hierarchy who are paranoid of people talking to each other, like the United States today, you don't combine those technologies. If they'd used those hydrogen technologies, which could have been done very easily, especially at the end of the war, because they actually made an overabundance of that stuff because they were running out of petroleum, and then we bombed that stuff. The problem was production in a fast and effective way. When you're trying to train a whole bunch of people, brand new people in a brand new technology or a brand new submarine, it don't work out. It's easier for you, instead of training a brand new crew who don't know anything, It's easier for you to produce a whole bunch of the same thing. And when you get a new crew, you cut them in half. I don't mean literally cut a person in half. What I mean is that half of your crew on, let's say, a Type 7 U-boat. You've got a Type 7 U-boat, and you build another Type 7 U-boat. Or you're an American, you build a Vallejo class, and then you build another Vallejo class. That allows you to have a standard as far as training goes. Now, for us, much of what we do, we like to send what we call them in Vietnam, observers. We wanted to send observers and training. But this is also what we took. For the United States, when we took over those midget submarines from the Italians in World War II, and we also used, I believe, 2 of the midget submarines that we captured after Pearl Harbor. Not the ones used in the Pearl Harbor attack, mind you. It was a different type of midget sub altogether, but it would have obviously been after Pearl Harbor. And I believe they were captured that same year. Or within the first year of the war starting, I should say. Because they weren't captured in December of 41. And I was listening to the story. I like listening to a lot of these stories. Like a guy named Mark Felton. A lot of his stuff is pretty interesting. I've always been interested in the way things work. And there's a lot of ideas that I have that I think are wonderful ideas. And I go out and I pursue building those things, never having a place to do it. But if I work hard enough and get a place, all the times that I thought I had a place, I couldn't afford the place. So all I'm doing is working and working and working and being told if I work hard enough, if I don't go do anything fun, ever, I'm not allowed to do anything fun. It means I'm not working. And all of you think that I should be working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, working. That's what capitalism is. It's work. It's the people at the bottom working for the benefit of those at the top. That's what communism is too. That's what socialism is too. All those words are supposed to mean the same thing. For the people. For the community. For society. Democratia. People power. That's what democracy literally means. People power. We the people. That's how the United States of America with our... What? What is the name of that document? Constitution of the United States of America starts with we the people. What we end up getting is people in power who manipulate you so they can get what they want. And that's all they do. They don't serve a useful purpose. Except as an example. Now, democracy is a sham, just like communism and just like socialism. Technology is not. Religions are shams. They're tools of manipulation. Kind of like philosophy. You guys have all tried to tell somebody about something that you're going through. You know, let's say it's something like you got punched in the face or somebody stole from you. They want to get philosophical. They got some saying written by some person who probably shouldn't have gotten the time of day as far as the attention they got, but they said something and they're famous, so it must be true. There's lots of other famous people who said just the opposite. Does that mean that both of them are right? That depends on the situation, and that's the point of looking at the situation. Instead of talking about yours and trying to assume that everything is going to be the way that it was for you. No, it's not the way that it was for you. Your situation is different from mine, and there are roadblocks that I'm encountering that you haven't. Now, we got midget submarines here in the United States, a whole bunch of them. We have the best designs, the best produced, the deepest diving submarines that there are. We've got a private submarine company that claims that they can make a glass bubble submarine. It's just a big glass bubble with some parts attached to it so you can move. It's got a seat, it's got a cup holder, it's got two little dinky engines on it. They say it can go up to 7,000 feet underwater. Sorry, 7,000 meters underwater, which is, well, around 21,000 feet. That's incredibly deep. Now, how are they able to do that? They just make it thicker. More thickness. There's another company that can make them that go down to 2,000 meters. That's 6,000 feet. This is another company that makes these glass bubbles. And their version can seat up to 11 people comfortably. Our midget submarines are par excellence. There are none better. We don't need to go to DARPA. Our civilians have access to this if they have enough money. If they need training, they don't need to go spend a bunch of money trying to get the manufacturer to get one of their test pilots to come out, and you've got one test pilot who's teaching people. No, we can go to civilian millionaires who bought one of these and go, hey, show us how it operates. They got a whole bunch of people who already operate them in the United States. There are lots of millionaires and billionaires who bought these fucking things that don't even use them. They have other people use it for them. There's a lot of, what do they call them, a philanthropist? Rich people that finance other people doing things. God, it would be nice if I had one of those for social equality, wouldn't it? Someone willing to finance a fucking lawyer to help me go through this shit? To make sure that the actual predators are where they need to go? When police officers are assisting sexual predators and getting away with committing crimes against at-risk adults, we have issues. We also have a whole bunch of options that we're told that we have. We have options to these things. You know, the British, if they want to have specialized submarines like that, they got to go to Finland or Sweden or to the United States. They no longer produce any of their own as far as having an actual factory to do so. They have to outsource. Germany, they had to outsource too, but they wanted to outsource their own designs, their own complicated crap. How difficult is it to make a Type 21 submarine? It's pretty complicated. How difficult is it to make a glass bubble? Pretty friggin' easy. And I don't actually know what those bubbles are made out of. It's not like a literal bubble. Some of y'all might want to pretend that because people tell you I'm schizophrenic. So in your mind, you're imagining, oh, la-da-dee, I'm crazy. I'm a 40-year-old man, and I'm in an institution with striped pajamas and a little bubble wand. Woo, bubbles, 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 bubbles. Yes, those can go underwater 2,000 meters. Holy shit, no. No, it's a... You've probably seen them pop up on your timeline or in little mini viewers. Kind of like they got this thing called a sea breacher. A sea breacher is basically a jet ski that's covered. It's got a snorkel. So, of course, it can go underwater for just a few seconds, but it can go underwater. It can do a barrel roll at the surface of the water. So, I mean, it doesn't flood the engine and kill it. You're able to, that's obviously what the snorkel is for. You know, if the military wanted a fast attack craft to get in onshore, you can literally beach them. Like, you can drive it onto the beach. You're going to have to push it back out after you're done, and you're going to scrape it. But you know, the military is going to put their own stuff on it anyway. That's where the military does their thing. They take what we have and we attach their hardware to it. They would take a sea breacher, and let's say it's for insertion and extraction. They'd be like, well, we want you to make one that's a little bit longer. Well, if they can keep the design the same in the military, whatever adaptations they need to make to it, they can make to it themselves. So if you got something that's mostly fiberglass and carbon fiber, things of that nature, you might want to put a plastic form-fitting piece of plastic and a piece of rubber attached to the bottom of it. That way you can actually take the impacts if you happen to need to beach somewhere where it's a little rougher than you might hope. Let's say they need to use it for aerial spotting. We know that some of these weapons that we're given to our allies, we may have to pinpoint a target ourselves and let them shoot it in. Well, we'll have to stay out of range. We'll need to have something to keep us far enough offshore to be out of range, but still close enough that we can paint the target. And we've got target painting up to 200 miles now. Here's the thing, the Earth curves. So how would you be able to paint that from 200 miles away? Well, let's say it's an aerial target. You can actually see an aerial target 200 miles away, just not with the naked eye. And that depends on where you're at. Out on the ocean, well, you don't have a lot of terrain in your way, and that gives you a definite advantage. With our midget submarines in World War II, we borrowed other people's midget submarines, or we just took them. At the end of the war, you know, that's what we call the spoils of war. We took a Type 21 submarine, the Russians took a Type 21 submarine, the British took a Type 21 submarine. They checked out the Type 21 submarines, and of course the Cold War was another arms race. World War I was an arms race. World War II, they went, hey, we'll make better arms. We'll make better guns than the next guy. We'll learn from our mistakes, and we'll learn how to kill each other better. Now, the United States, one of the things that we noticed about midget submarines is that they were a lot more effective than we ever told our public. We allowed people to think that Liberty ships were just falling apart because we didn't want them to realize the actual dangers of those midget submarines. But the United States doesn't have to worry about that, and they don't have to worry about not having them. They can get people mounted and trained in those things in just a matter of weeks. They can get a production facility online in just a matter of weeks because they're already there. All you're doing is setting up production to make more of them. Once you've got people who know how to make every part of that, or you've got 2 or 3 people trained on different shifts to do it, then you can split the shifts. Let's say everybody works an 8-hour shift. And let's say you have 3 shifts in a 24-hour day, and I know the lunches and all that, complications, whatever. But let's say you got 3 different crews, basically, that are all trained to build your miniature submarine. Well, now those 3 crews, if the government is building another factory for you, like Willow Run in World War II for the B-24 Liberator. Well, then they're setting up for a more mass scale, and it's probably going to be done all through civilian contracting. It's not all going to be the Seabees doing everything. Those guys work in the war zones. They work in the logistics department. That's their forte, logistics. Getting it where it needs to go and making sure that it's able to be distributed to who it needs to be distributed to. You got to distribute troops across the river, the Seabees will make you a river. They'll make you a river to cross if that's the way you want to do it. If you need a bridge built, they'll build you a bridge. But a lot of that stuff is purpose built for the military, to military specifications by builders who are still stuck in the last war. That's where civilian oversight is so important. We advance so much quicker. These new little glass bubble submarines that you can drop down thousands of meters, thousands. I mean, World War II submarines, you didn't want to go past a couple of 100 feet. A lot of those guys, they knew their ship was only tested to go down 90 meters. That's about 300 feet, isn't it? 90 meters. American subs were not tested for that deep. They weren't even supposed to go that deep. Gato-class submarines weren't supposed to go past 100 feet. You could send them down to 250, but not much past that. That's why they made the Vallejo class. The Vallejo class is called the thick skin sub. That's where we made the difference right there. We said we're going to make these things with a thicker hull. Not much else was changed on the Vallejo class. America mass-produced a bunch of the same thing when it came to almost everything we produced, whereas most of these other nations were lagging behind. We also produced enough of the big stuff in such massive quantities nobody could keep up. Even if they were just building the midget submarines, you know, we get to see how the Germans at the end of the war, they had literally thousands of different types and models of midget submarines produced all over the place that were complete shit and not doing squat. A lot of it was because they were overcomplicated. They didn't have the people trained to do it. They didn't test it properly, and when they realized there was safety issues, they didn't use simple fixes. America also got to see the failures of other countries. Because every country, when they catch a midget submarine, is advertising it. Hey, we caught these guys. Your super stealth ships, your super ninja boats. We're not that fucking ninja. And of course, that gets chalked up as a failure, but we get to see also how time and again, not just with the British, they had 2 of their ships were sunk by midget submarines, but it was a shallow enough port that they didn't realize it. Same thing happened to the Germans with the Tirpitz and the X-Craft from the British. The British went, man, that X-Craft didn't work worth a shit. But it turned out that they were all successful missions. Now, when you get stuff from the beginning of the war versus stuff at the end of the war, you get to see that the technological advances, some of them that had been made by the end of the war, had been dropped because it just wasn't convenient or feasible. They didn't have anybody that was trained to build it or make it, and they couldn't feasibly train them quickly because they didn't follow the American model of having it. Halving. Or Halfing. I'm not sure which. I'm supposed to be real good at spelling, but I don't know how to spell everything, and I'm not perfect. But you take, like for example, you take your Vallejo class submarine, and you've got your 106 men on board, and all of them are trained on every station. So you take half of them, and you put them on the next boat. You take your first officer, that's the second in command, and you give him command of the second boat. And then he gets a second in command on that boat, and the first one gets a second in command on his boat. Now you've got 2 Vallejo class submarines with each one having half of a fully trained crew. And they can teach the other half of the crew quick, fast, and in a hurry. They can give them on-the-job training. They can be already on the way while giving their crew active training. Not just the idea or concept of, but actually out there and doing it. That's where building comes in. When you've got the hands-on experience, you can teach people then and there, especially if they are there then and there, even if they are a raw recruit who doesn't know shit. It doesn't take a rocket science to turn a knob, but on a complicated piece of machinery, it is important to know which knob to turn. And when you go to reach for the wrong knob that could kill all of you, it's nice to have yourself somebody right next to you who can go, whoa, you don't touch that one, and here is why. Sometimes you might get on a submarine that's got a little bit of changes or adaptations. Now here in America, we live in the lap of luxury because now the military can order any custom stuff that it wants. It's probably not going to waste the money on a cup holder. And I do apologize for that. Those of you who want to sit with a cold brew, a Dr. Pepper, or a Mountain Dew. If you're in the military, they're probably not going to give you that. But you might get a seat. You might get the basics and the bare essentials. See, they're not interested in all the bells and whistles that somebody would want if they're in the lap of luxury. You know, they don't need a wet bar underneath the water. They don't need, 4 refrigerators that are all full of wines and liqueurs. They don't need a bunch of real nice, fancy, pretty paneling. I mean, hell, it's easier to not have that stuff in there. Because if there's something wrong, you want to have access to fix it quickly. You're under fucking water. Also, you're going to be putting wear and tear on that it would not normally or otherwise be put through. And one of the things I wanted to know about it is how do they stand up to depth charges? Well, I would imagine that the shape of the thing and the way that sound travels, you would probably get killed immediately by a depth charge. It wouldn't have to shatter the glass bubble. It's just the way that the density and the refraction and the fact that all of that will be put on you. You're basically having that sound bounce off you from all sides and reverberate, and it's not going to do good things to your insides. Now, I could be completely wrong about that, but that's one of the things about submarines. Like in World War II, there were multiple technologies that could have been put together. When they made the Seahoon submarine and the Beaver submarine, they could have actually trained people if they'd had the American method. They could have actually trained people to put the engines together and get them into the vehicle in a timely and efficient manner and get a bunch of them out there. Some of the technologies that they used on submarines, like putting the special rubber coating around the outside of a couple of the German submarines, if they'd put that around like the Seahoon submarine, and they also had it powered off of that hydrogen, and they also still had the powered battery, they could have saved a lot of weight and put more batteries and even more torpedoes on it. For America, we tried to put on a big face of we are the big juggernaut, and you go ahead and put out all your little fleas and gnats or whatever. They're not doing us any harm. We're fine. But the reality was we lost a lot to midget submarines, and to this day, a lot of those numbers are classified. The British lost a lot to midget submarines, and to this day, a lot of that stuff is still classified. We know a bit about a lot of the German stuff that got sank because, we want to exploit the hell out of that. Like, look, see, our midget submarines actually did some good. But we even downplayed, how good our stuff did, because why? Well, in the United States of America, we didn't want to admit that we were even playing with the Italian stuff until the 90s. And then we went, yep, not only did we do that, but the Italians continued to make us midget submarines. That's right. The Italians were providing a modern version of the Maiale to United States Navy SEALs going up into the 1970s and 80s. Producing the pig. They actually used the pig, the World War II pig. I don't mean a literal pig, I mean a midget submarine that was called the pig. They were using the pig, that thing, that death trap. They were using a modernized version of it in all of our recent conflicts. The last that we have any verification of it, of course, is we've had some Navy SEALs speak about using them. And where did they use them? That's right, against Saddam Hussein the first time. Now, we don't know if they actually used them the second time or the third time. Maybe we do. Maybe there's some people that have spoken up about their experiences and talked about those things, but they're not produced by us. And also the United States, there's a reason that those were retired. As soon as that Ballard feller went out there and started finding really deep shipwrecks, there's a bunch of philanthropists that went, hey, you know, I really want a submarine like that. And I'm going to have to build something like that if I actually want to do that. And I'm going to have to hire people who know what they're doing because I don't want to fucking die. And I have the money to pay professionals that'll do it right. And now, here we are 20, 30 years later. 30 years later. After that whole revolution and renaissance really started kicking off. And who do we have to thank for that? A Frenchman by the name of Jacques Cousteau. His name is still famous worldwide, and I hope it remains that way forever. Mike Ballard was not the first, and he won't be the last. And when it comes to stuff that rich people like, they'll invest the money. If it's something that they like, even if it's our ideas that they got to build it from, they have the money to do it and we don't. But that also means that that stuff can be used for our defense if it is absolutely necessary and pushed. If the military says, I want that, I just don't want all of that plastic shit that you got covering everything that we need access to. Heck, you've just taken out 30 hours worth of labor. That's in assembly and, of course, construction of those plastic moldings and having to go through all the stuff to melt everything down and all the people that are hired to do that and all those extra hands. You don't need them for that anymore. You can put them on the assembly line on something else. Maybe there's something that when you build one and you basically build them to order and at your own pace because, you know, let's say you have to build 5 of these submarines for the civilian market over the course of a year. You take your dear sweet time. You know, you might have a part where you're putting in a specific type of seal, and sure, it would be easier if you had 2 people to do it. But really, you know, everybody else, while you got them in the shop, you have them trained on their jobs. You can do it yourself. And, you know, it may take you 6 hours to put in this special seal. And if you had 2 to 3 people helping you, you could probably install the seal in a couple of minutes. And all of you have had jobs, at least those of you who have worked construction, have all had jobs at home where you went, you know what, this is a lot easier at work doing this for my boss because I've got someone helping me with it. You're helping your boss is helping you. It's a mutually beneficial situation. For America, we like to prance around pompous, and when we run into a situation where we need such thing, thank goodness we can find somebody who can provide. We can find a crew or a factory or something, and we can have it. We can cut the situation in half and start 2 assembly lines. We can cut out the excessive crap because it's a military thing. You don't need to put any of the luxury cup holders in there. You know, you can take out the 2 guys that it takes to assemble it, because you got to have one that puts the cup holder together, and you got to have one that puts the cup holder in the spot where it needs to go. But you've also got the people that got to produce whatever it is that that plastic cup holder is made out of. And by getting rid of all of those guys, you can put your seal in now in like 5 minutes or less. Cool. We just redirect something that's already here because it's already here. And then we do actually give credit, almost where credit is due. We give credit to the contractors and the salesmen who are able to make the sales pitch and get Congress to actually listen. They go, hey, I got the money, I got the boats. Let's put my boat up against your boat. If Congress wants to say my boat is shit and your boat is the best thing since the invention of sliced bread, well then let's put my boat up against your sliced bread and see which one cuts the waves quicker. Let's see which one banks faster. Can you imagine being the military folks who had turned down the project for making patrol riverboats in Vietnam that wouldn't sink? They had boats. They said, our boats are great. They're the best design ever. It gives us everything that the military wants. Sure, it doesn't really work, but that's because we're thinking of the ideas for fighting the last war. So this guy goes out there and he has some military personnel with machine guns shoot a bunch of fucking holes in his boat. Can your boat do that? So it's not that the United States doesn't produce any of this. It's that we've got an abundance of access. The Navy SEALs quit using those pig submarines because we have a lot better stuff now. We've got a lot better infiltration tactics. We've got these little handheld things, and you've probably seen these things advertised. You might have even seen them being used in some of your videos that you like to watch. Or it's a little thing that you hold on to, and it's a fan that goes over your hand, and you got 2 of them. And you squeeze a little button, and it makes you go forward. It pulls you through the water. Really cool. Like making yourself into a human pod racer. Your body is the pod, and your hands or your arms are the chains going out to it. And then, of course, it does have a thing in between them so that you don't run them into each other. But, you know, you can let go of them at any point in time. They're lightweight. The whole thing weighs less than 10 pounds. It can propel you like 6 knots through the water. I was going to say 4 knots, but that's the little thing that you sit on. There's a really cool one that it's kind of a submarine, but really it's just a seat that you sit on that has a tank for your head. And it's so that people who want to go diving and seeing stuff underwater, but they don't want to do the scuba certifying and they don't have all the money for all of that, well, it's user-friendly. You know what that also means? It means since those are already being produced, if we need to, we can go out there and train people how to use these things in 10 minutes. Whereas if you look at the show, it's called Salvage something or other, I think. But if you look up Bieber Submarine, B-I-B-E-R, Midget Submarine, and then you look at, not Salvage Wars, but it's Salvage something or other. I don't remember. I'm trying to remember so I can tell you. But you look at the thing and how incredibly complicated it is. You look at how, like, the guy who's a personal submarine owner, you know, this guy's got a lot of practice. He gets into this thing. The lady who, you know, is the star of the show, she wants to be able to use this Bieber submarine, get in it, drive it, and dive it herself, you know, but by the end of the show, you know, it's probably takes a few months for them to film everything from start to finish, but by the end of the show, when they make the segment about it, she wants to be the one in it. Well, everybody explains to her that, first of all, the Bieber submarine killed most of its users. It's not a safe machine. So yeah, sure, you'll have the only surviving German World War II submarine capable of diving, but it'll kill you if you try it. So they were able to make it so that they would just test it with the electric engines. And the lady didn't get to do it. They had that guy who had been working with submarines and testing submarines, been in the submarine service himself, actually get in and drive it. They also had a German pilot who had driven it. So, I mean, I'm sure that there was some communication between them on how exactly it works. So this guy who got into it and ran it, when he was explaining to this lady that he couldn't teach her in a 5-minute crash course, he couldn't. He could be taught by somebody who had been a pilot of it already, a 5-minute crash course, because he was familiar with the technology, he was familiar with the purposes, he was familiar with the terminology, he was familiar with the process. You just had to show him which lever does what it is that he wants it to do. So he was able to get in, and he was able to run this thing, and yes, it did dive, and yes, it did go on its own power, and it did great. It did wonderfully. It performed wonderfully. And, you know, with it being a midget sub that is that complicated, from World War II, built out of last-minute desperation stuff, and all of that stuff that it would have taken to train a crew. It took 6 weeks at least to train a person to use the Beaver submarine. It was a friggin' death trap. All of them were. So when they got one that really did work well, that's where they wanted to keep it. The Japanese, they actually did make extremely, extremely efficient midget submarines. Just the ones they used at the beginning of the war were complete shit. But even that model, the model that they took into Pearl Harbor, they put bigger rudders on it and a couple of other small modifications, and that submarine ended up taking out something like 11 convoy ships. That's right, we were running convoys in the Pacific and the Atlantic. We had to run convoys across the Pacific because we needed to get our troops where they needed to go. We needed to get the logistics, you know, all that stuff the Seabees got to take care of. We got to get it where it needs to go. And we focused on the big. We focused on big groups, big numbers, big guns, and mass quantities of them. We will concentrate our fire en masse. Good luck getting close. And where does a midget submarine really fit into that? Now, there was a proposal and an idea in World War II to have midget submarines within the deck of a something similar to a landing ship tank that would be used as like a miniature aircraft carrier, but later became the, not a fleet carrier, but the fast carriers. That's one of the things, the guy that was making the Liberty ships and a few other ships like that was producing mass quantities of them. Well, he ended up making 50 fast carriers in just a few years. I want to say he was able to make 50 carriers from being brought the proposal to having them built in 2 years' time. That's just phenomenal. When we talk about how we only had one carrier out on the ocean, we like to make ourselves sound like the real underdogs, because we only had one carrier out on the ocean, and it was the USS Enterprise, the CD-6. Now, the Enterprise was a Essex-class carrier. It wasn't very big. And we didn't have any of the fast carriers. We literally didn't have any. I mean, the Langley was not going to do us any good, and it also wasn't in the Pacific doing anything. We also have a lot of stuff that they're novelty ideas, and we get to see how they were played around with by other countries before we go invest in a bunch of stuff into a big mistake. We got to see what an idiotic idea the cruiser subs were. Push the I-4 great and wonderful idea for this submarine carrier, and they didn't. They totally didn't. They made theirs so that it would hold 3 airplanes. That's the only thing spectacular about the I-400 series of massive submarines. The French had already done it with the Souffleur. I probably butchered that name because I'm French and don't speak French. But, of course, the United States also did have their own version of that. It's because there was a period of time they thought it might actually work. Then we got to see the K-series and the T-series of submarines that came out of Great Britain and all of the ginormous flops that they ended up being. You know, having a big cruiser with a big gun on it, and what good did it do you? A good idea for the last war, but what good is it going to do you on this one? It's still only an 8-inch gun. You don't need an 8-inch gun to go through civilian stuff, and an 8-inch gun isn't going to go through a battleship. So if you're running up against anything bigger than a cruiser, you're probably screwed. You might be screwed firing that at a cruiser. Matter of fact, you probably are, unless you're within its gun elevation. But we got to see that the cruiser sub was a dumb idea. We did try the aircraft carrier sub. The French Souffleur, or whatever it's called, it was both. It was a cruiser submarine that also had the capability to launch aircraft. Well, later on, the United States of America, after World War II, we adapted a couple of Vallejo-class submarines so that they could actually accept aircraft. Of course, it wasn't the same kind of aircraft, was it? No, by the time we had Navy SEALs and they were floating around in Vietnam, what the adaptation was to make the deck wider in a certain area so you could land helicopters. And even that idea wasn't really that new because they had gyroplanes that were towed behind helicopters in World War II and prior to World War II as a test idea or concept. One of the greatest ideas for a gyroplane, and I found this out after coming up with my own ideas of literally the same thing, not in literally the same way, but it's a fold-up gyrocopter. I mean, they could just fold it up and fold it back down, just like a folding lawn chair. Well, as long as you do it right, it's a great idea. So when it comes to questions like that, it gets really complicated. Just something like that can get incredibly complicated as far as an explanation goes. And I listened to 4 or 5 different channels on that. I love military history, mostly because I love the fact that the wars fucking ended. I love the fact that we got a lot of great technology out of those wars, but I hate the fact that it took war to do it. Before technical advancements are made to help save people's lives, they are generally used for taking them. The UH-1 Huey helicopter was originally designed as an ambulance. Then they turned it into a gunship. And then the gunship that they turned the UH-1 Huey into was complete shit because it was made for an ambulance, not as a gunship. So then they slimlined it down, made it so that it didn't have to carry 6 to 8 litters. A litter is a stretcher, like what they put a injured person on. So when you've got a helicopter that is made to carry 6 to 8 litters, that's pretty wide and it's pretty long, and if you can take all of that weight out, all of that metal that it takes to create that length and that girth, you can make it streamlined and you can replace that weight with something else and make it faster instead of making it slower. It sucks when you've got to send out 2 gunships. They're supposed to escort 6 Hueys that are full of people, transport, and they're not doing ambulance stuff either, are they? They're delivering troops. That's not ambulance stuff. So the helicopter goes out there, and it's a gunship, and it has to leave before the Hueys do, so that it can hopefully get there just before the Hueys arrive to clear the area, and you've got a very quick, like 3 minutes to get the insertion and extraction done. And in most areas, they try to get it done from LOS to being on the ground in under 3 minutes, which means line of sight to your visual target. You're landing in that field over there. You're probably up in the air. You're probably just above the tree line. Getting an LOS, you might not get the LOS in a jungle area on a small patch until you're right over the top of it. You're going to have to pull back around and try another landing. You also got to get the timing correct. And you're also looking at the fact that behind you, you've got some Hueys that are flying in your direction that are full of troops that have no protection on the way there because you're too far ahead of them. It's all a matter of logistics. America, with our logistics from our allies, we can just take their lessons to heart. And also with civilians in America, a lot of rich civilians with nothing better to do and nothing better to spend their money on but toys. Some of those toys, the reason that people had the idea for those toys was either A, because that technology is a military technology, is really cool, and they want one of their own. You know, they want to be able to do that magic power, not necessarily to blow stuff up, but to be able to sink below the waves and come right back up again. Go thousands of feet below there and check out stuff that nobody else has ever seen. And then come back up. Or number two, they want to go see or research or even pull up old wrecks that were sank during times of war, during, of course, ancient times. We found quite a few really old wrecks in the Balkans. Sorry, the Baltic Sea, my bad. Oh, it looks like I was disconnected. Anyway, you know how we end these videos. Good to be rid of you. Thanks for coming to visit. Stay out of trouble or don't get caught. Remember, you are your brother's keeper and no victim left behind.